Hello everyone, welcome back to 66 Aviator. My name is Marcus J and it's time for a repair video. My buddy Alan has a 2003 Dynamic WT9. Fun fact, that was the fastest WT9 at the time because it was the first retractable gear WT9. Alan noticed he had some paint chips on the leading edge of his left wing, and when he looked closer you could push on them and they were soft spots, and there were probably, I don't know if there were 2 or 3, maybe 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches in diameter, but they needed to be repaired. Before you start sanding, when you're doing fiberglass repairs, most important thing is use a wax remover to clean it off and prep it before you touch it with sandpaper. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're embedding the wax right into the paint and the fiberglass, and when you're trying to bond epoxy, either fiberglass or carbon fiber, to the base that's there, it's not going to stick as well if you have a chance of having wax in there. So, important thing, get the wax off first before you touch it with a sandpaper. Once it was prepped, sand it down to the base, get the exposed fiberglass where we needed to do the repair. Then, next step, you can see here, we brush on some epoxy that was mixed up to get it right onto the front edge of that wing where the fiberglass was, and then we apply 2 strips of carbon fiber bidirectional cloth that were about I think 3 inches by almost 4 feet long, just enough to cover the whole leading edge where it had the soft spots in there. Biggest thing now is that we vacuum bag this, and if you're not familiar with vacuum bagging, that what that does is sucks all the excess air out of the area that you're doing the repair on, and it also takes out the excess resin. When you apply the vacuum to it, you can suck it down, and you can, I've had some cases where I'm vacuum bagging and I can get, you know, almost 15 pounds per square inch of force, which is a lot. This one, we had it at about 7 pounds per square inch. I think there was probably some pinholes on the back where we had the soft spots. It was kind of sucking some air through those, and if you have an air leak, you can't get it the pressure as high. So we had about 7 pounds per square inch that we were pulling it down to, and it's still, that's a lot of compression. So we suck out most of that excess material to lighten it up. The other thing is we didn't want it too thick because we're trying to keep the same profile of the leading edge without changing the shape of the wing. That was the most important thing, is to keep that leading edge the correct shape and have it match everywhere else. Next step was to mix up some epoxy with micro. Now, if you're not familiar with micro, it's microspheres or micro balloons. They're basically little glass bubbles that are full of air. And when you put that in there, there's 2 purposes. You make the epoxy lighter and you make it easier to sand. Spread that on like a filler, and it's better than using, you know, a Bondo or a body filler because it's lighter weight and it's still epoxy resin, which bonds better to the base material. A couple coats of that, sand that back down, get it smooth, and then you apply the primer. Here, I'm going in with the primer and I'm really looking for imperfections or pinholes, anything that I missed with the micro epoxy mix, because the primer is going to lay on thick. It's a primer filler. So I lay down pretty thick because I'm going to go back and I'm going to sand it smooth so that my top coat, my paint, will go on smooth and I won't have any imperfections left there. Once we did that, I painted that leading edge repair, and I was trying to patch in just that area, but it didn't quite come out the way we wanted. If you didn't know, there are a multitude of shades of white out there, and even though we took a piece of the airplane to the paint shop and they scanned it and tried to match the paint, it's never perfect. And this paint, he couldn't just buy the same exact paint he had, you know, from the factory, whatever, almost 20 years ago, 19 years ago. So we tried to match it. It didn't come out the way we wanted it to. So I wasn't satisfied with that. When it was done, it just looked like I had this rectangle on the front of the wing. The color was off. So the best thing to do, we just sanded the whole top of the wing, taped off the aileron, taped off the flap, you know, removed the gap seals, sanded the whole top, and then I painted the entire top of the wing, which was going fine. Until, if you watch the top left corner of the screen, you can see the storm coming. And we were trying like heck to get done before the storm got there. And just as I'm spraying the last of the last coat, I literally just finished the last pass and the power went out. That's the second time that's happened to me. Not painting, the other time was doing the avionics install. So we lost power, but fortunate thing, I had just finished. We were able to get the door shut. We came back a couple days later and it looked pretty good, but I like to sand and polish things up. We sanded it all down with 1,000 grit and 1,500 grit and buffed it out with, we used rubbing compound and then polishing compound, got it cleaned up. Best thing is, it's white, it's shiny, and there's no more soft spots, and Alan is back in the air. All right, you know the drill. Like, share, subscribe, and feel free to comment.